Hey everyone, and welcome to week 7 of Mull It Over. This time, let's take a look at Libram Paladin, an older archetype that was given stronger early game this expansion with the inclusion of secrets. As you might expect, the two highest priority cards to keep are Aldor Attendant and Sword of the Fallen, because they unlock your deck's Libram synergy and Secret synergy respectively. Attendant is undisputedly your best play for both tempo and long-term setup on turn 1. But what about turn 2? When Surrender faces Alan's Spellmage, he has access to both Sword of the Fallen and Hand of Adal as on-curve follow-up plays to the Attendant. Even though it's less immediate damage than Hand of Adal, he goes for the Sword in order to disrupt Alan's turn 3 and turn 4 with the threat of Oh My Yogg. It's especially difficult for Spellmage to test for it without the coin and without having drawn Incanter's Flow, whereas the damaged Attendant buffed by Hand of Adal could easily have been removed by Combustion. Disruption with secrets is effective even if it's just a bluff. Alan respects it to the point where he delays his deck of Lunacy on turn 4 game plan. The second sword from Surrender still doesn't immediately pull Oh My Yogg, but once again makes Alan use a Brain Freeze for essentially no value, just to let his Lunacy go off safely. And when the sword finally pulls the second Oh My Yogg, even if Alan knows all 3 secrets in play, it's still a pain to have to throw his Cram Session away. In the meantime, Surrender has amassed plenty of resources and thinned his deck of secrets, which are lackluster top decks. It's a similar story when Surrender faces Give Please on Token Druid, another deck that operates entirely on spells. Even an Attendant buffed by Hand of Adal isn't threatening enough to prevent Give Please from building a huge Gibberling or Glowfly Swarm board, so Surrender once again elects to set up a potential Oh My Yogg or Galloping Savior, both of which Druid can't avoid proccing during a Gibberling turn. He unfortunately misses on both those secrets, which means that Give Please gets a full Gibberling turn, but crucially, the possibility of Oh My Yogg made Give Please use up his Innervate. Surrender's second swing of the sword missed on Oh My Yogg again, which I originally thought quite unlucky, but as it happens, the bluff value still dissuades Give Please from going with Pride's Fury, which probably would have won him the game on the spot, instead testing with Solar Eclipse into Thorngrowth Sentries. The time Surrender bought with the secrets allows him to narrow the board with Penflinger and take persistent trades until he stabilizes. A situation where turn 2 Hand of Adal is potentially superior to Sword of the Fallen is when Muzzy faces Language Hacker on Miracle Rogue. Even if Muzzy kept the sword, he knows secrets such as Galloping Savior are more effective a bit later when Rogue is looking to play many more cards in a turn, whereas a 3-5 Attendant on turn 2 is very difficult for Rogue to remove efficiently. Importantly, this also gives Muzzy one more draw to get a potential Libram of Wisdom, which could put his Attendant at 4 attack and negate the threat of an Octobot from Rogue. On turn 3, Muzzy also goes for Smart Ordering to optimize his draws. Sword of the Fallen and swing first before playing Knight of Anointment, just in case he pulls the Holy Secret Reckoning that he'd rather not draw from the Knight. This is also relevant to Surrender's version, which runs Avenge instead. Speaking of Knight of Anointment, it's another common keep, but is quite a ways below Attendant in kept win rate because it's not a very powerful turn 1 play, especially when you're on the coin, and opponents such as Rogue and Mage can simply use their hero power to remove it. It's still guaranteed card draw though, so it's a bit surprising to see Chonsu toss it when he faces Alan's Mage. But he does already have guaranteed turn 1 and turn 2 plays from the first day of school that he kept. Chonsu is saying he wants maximum tempo and isn't too interested in drawing buff spells from the Knight versus a deck that runs Devolving Missiles. He does get good early pressure with Bladed Cultist on 2, one of the best outcomes from first day, but tossing Knight can also risk running out of resources. When Blythe faces Viper's Miracle Rogue, he actually chooses to go Knight on turn 1 instead of Aldor Attendant. In this instance, Blythe is on the play, and he knows Rogue doesn't want to coin hero power in most situations, so the immediate health on his minion isn't all that relevant. What he values is for the Knight to have the chance of picking up Hand of Adal as a clean turn 2, as the alternate play of Aldor Attendant and Oh My Yogg doesn't feel very strong when Rogue has the coin. He instead picks up Libram of Wisdom, which happens to also be playable even if he had started with Aldor Attendant on turn 1 and the Knight on turn 2, but Hand of Adal would not have been. Hand of Adal is so crucial for both early game tempo and cycle that Muzzy keeps it even without a guaranteed 1-drop when he faces Luna's Control Warrior. However, on turn 2, he cleverly deviates from playing it on his Aldor Attendant in order to play around Minefield. He opts for Knight of Anointment and Oh My Yogg instead. Oh My Yogg is tough for Warrior to play around this early without the coin, and the blocked Minefield allows Muzzy to keep around more persistent threats. And then on the next turn, Hand of Adal is consequently much more difficult for Luna to deal with. Like Hand of Adal, Northwatch Commander is an important tool for Libram Paladin to keep cycling while still applying pressure. Northwatch is an easy keep when Sword of the Fallen is already available, like Bly's does versus Lada's Weapon Rogue. Against Lada's Rush Warrior, however, Bly's goes for a very interesting plan of keeping Oh My Yogg and Northwatch when he's on the coin. Normally, you never keep secrets in the Mulligan because you'd rather pull them from Sword of the Fallen, but in this instance, it's a near guaranteed way of getting the Northwatch to draw on turn 2. Without coin, Rush Warrior has no spells they often play early other than Athletic Studies, and Bly's knows that if Leda has it, then he's very likely to play it on turn 1. And so Bly's own turn 1 play of Oh My Yogg is very likely to stay intact, thus allowing him to coin out the Northwatch Commander for draw value. As it happens, Bly's draws Sword of the Fallen on turn 2 and deviates from the plan in order to save coin for Talon instead. But had he not drawn it, the Northwatch was still a decent play. The Libram Paladin versus Rush Warrior matchup is very interesting as a whole because while it does tend to be Warrior favored, Paladin can sometimes edge out an advantage in the late game if they don't fall too far behind early. A key card here and in many other matchups is Aldor Truthseeker, which makes Libram of Wisdom free and Libram of Hope come down a lot earlier. However, the threat of early Warrior curve is so high that Muzzy actually tosses the Truthseeker when he's on the play versus Language Hacker's Warrior. I have to say, I found this a bit surprising because he already had first day of school in hand to cover his early turns, but there's certainly value in looking for Sword and Northwatch Commander as well. When Muzzy faces Rami's Rush Warrior though, he's on the coin and goes in the other direction, keeping Truthseeker and Libram of Hope alongside first day. The plan is a bit ambitious and really needs at least one more Libram discounter to allow the Truthseeker to curve cleanly into Libram of Hope, but I think the risk is justified in this unfavorable matchup. Funnily enough, Muzzy gets an Eldar Attendant off of first day of school, which makes up for him never drawing his natural copies. As expected, he falls behind heavily in the early game and is forced to give up his Penflinger just to clear Rakara, but his other resources are abundant. With the turn 5 Truthseeker into turn 6 Libram of Hope, he finally stabilizes. And with Liadrin to follow up, it's too much for even Rami's back-to-back troublemakers to overcome. And that's all for this week. Unfortunately for Uther fans, Libram Paladin did get hit by the new nerfs to Hand of Adal and first day of school, so it's not seeing very much play in GM playoffs, but only time will tell if it's still viable on ladder or not. See you next time.